This is Peter Laws in Norman, Oklahoma. AM, FM, shortwave, amateur radio, and more. You'll hear all the latest news from the world of radio each week with Sheldon and Jill on the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report for Sunday, January the 12th, 2025. My name's Sheldon. I'm here with Jill, and this is our 30 minutes of news and information from the world of radio coming to you from CKUT here in Montreal. We have a jam-packed show, lots of items to tell you about things going on locally, big stories out of the United States, and some international activity as well. So we should get right to it. We thank you for tuning in. We'll start off with a sad note from Montreal media. Montreal media personality Lezlie Robinson has died at the age of 66. Lezlie Robinson was known by Montrealers for her work on radio airwaves and TV. She died on New Year's Eve at the age of 66. Robinson had a diverse career, from being a traffic reporter for CJD 800 AM, modeling in Canada and the US, and she was actually a cheerleader for the Canadian Football League's Montreal Alouettes. And then moved on, was acting in some films as well. She worked at several radio stations in Montreal and other markets as a host and a co-host. Her obituary describes her as a multifaceted person with many gifts who always loved life's adventures and challenges. Lezlie found her great passion as an on-air radio and TV personality in Montreal, where she shared her unique voice and spent many years working at various broadcast stations around the city, developing a loyal audience of listeners who loved her energy, enjoyed her humor, and felt they knew her. CJD host Aaron Rand worked with Robinson at Q92 in the 90s. Rand learned of his former colleague's passing from a listener on his show and said he was shocked by the news. CJD is saddened by the news that broadcaster and former traffic reporter Lezlie Robinson died. We would like to take a moment to extend our sympathies to her family and friends. She was one of those people who I consider a natural as far as radio was concerned. She not only sounded great, but was as smart as she was sharp, with a great appreciation for everything Montreal, Aaron said. She also had an amazing sense of humor, which was often contagious. She was a tremendous talent, and I was incredibly saddened to hear of her passing. My sincere condolences to her family. One of her former colleagues, Ted Silver, called Robinson a talented broadcaster, fun to work with, and a good friend. In addition to doing traffic and weather reporting on Montreal television, she also did voice work for the Just for Laughs TV programming. So, really sad to hear that. Just 66 years old, which is makes it even more sad, I think. Way too young.
In our next story, we have KFI Los Angeles provides round-the-clock coverage of wildfire battles. This is via Inside Radio. KFI Los Angeles, 6:40 a.m., coverage of the raging wildfires in the Los Angeles suburbs is another example of the power of AM radio. Days before the wildfires broke out, the iHeartMedia talk outlet was relaying information about the threat of a historic wind event and wildfires. Station anchors were alerting listeners in areas that may be threatened to prepare for possible evacuations. The information was shared within the cluster and was broadcast across the company's stations in the market. KFI had one of the very first reports of a wildfire spotted thanks to a listener who called in saying they were seeing smoke in the Palisades area on Tuesday morning. We were able to jump on it very quickly, Executive VP of Newstalk Programming Chris Berry tells Inside Radio. Our listeners are sometimes the very best reporters because they're eyewitnesses to the scene. KFI has been in wall-to-wall coverage, which will continue until further notice. Tim Conway Jr. and Neil Saavedra handled most of the overnight coverage, with reports from Berry live in the studio. A lot of these listeners did not have electricity in the middle of the night. There were 400,000 people without power, so they didn't have the internet. Cell phone service was spotty, but they had a radio, Barry explains. This reinforces the importance of radio during breaking news. It really is a lifeline, providing vital information to our listeners and listeners to the other stations that were live overnight. News anchor Amy King joined the broadcast Wednesday morning, January 8th, and told of seeing blowing embers, which, combined with the wind, resulted in lifeguard towers burning on the beaches. ABC News' Alex Stone added to the reports, saying he was watching a long line of packed cars as people evacuated the Altadena area. The winds do seem to be dying down a bit, and that will help firefighters try to contain these fires, he said. The FM stations in the cluster, including KOST, KBIG, KIIS, KYSR, and KRRL, are continuing to carry news reports and updates from KFI. Local hosts on the music stations, including Ellen Kay on KOST, Ryan Seacrest on KIIS, and Valentine on KBIG, focused their morning shows on the wildfires. It's a real connection that radio has with our listeners, Barry said. We're dependable and, of course, very credible because of the relationship that our hosts and disc jockeys have with their audience. Hey, this is another case for AM radio in vehicles. No power. Sometimes, even if you don't have a radio at home, you have your car. You go to your car and you listen to that radio station.
Yeah, we have a few updates to this. There have been a lot of interesting postings online. We saw this item last evening, actually, Thursday evening, posted by Chris Thompson on the AM DXing Facebook group. He says that this ties in to what everyone is talking about. He says, I'm not trying to make light of a bad situation, but I was just watching the live news feed from KCBS, KCAL in Southern California. They're expecting to lose their transmission site shortly due to an approaching wildfire. In a nutshell, every line of site transmitter serving that area could go down in the next hour. TV, FM, land mobile, public safety, etc. I think it should make people pause and think about the logic of shutting down AM or medium wave stations. I realize a lot of people stream TV and radio now, but if all you have is a portable radio, you're not going to be doing that. How true is that statement?
Yep.
Another update came in from a source called thedesk.net, written by Matthew Keys. He says a wildfire burning in the greater Los Angeles area has reached Mount Wilson, the location of dozens of transmission towers that blanket the region with radio and television signals. Flames from the Eaton fire reached the top of Mount Wilson around 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, according to live images broadcast by Los Angeles television KTLA. LA Fire Department Chief Kristen Crowley was speaking with KTLA when the flames reached the transmission towers and reassured the station and its viewers that fire officials were aware of the situation. I know from the LA County side that it is an important infrastructure site, Crowley said. With that, I'm sure that they are very well aware of that, and they are going to address that as soon as they are capable of doing so. The site is the location of television transmitters used by nearly all radio and television stations in the Los Angeles area. And they go on to list all of those, including several radio stations. Several of them, including KFI 640 and KNX 1070, also maintain transmitters at that site. In a note on its website, KABC said the fire could impact the ability to receive its over-the-air signal in Los Angeles. If the fire compromises the site, which houses antennas and transmitters, that could affect your ability to watch the ABC 7 Los Angeles Eyewitness News broadcast, the station said, writing that viewers can still watch live newscasts via the ABC 7 Los Angeles app for phones, tablets, and smart TVs. KNBC, KABC, and KCBS, KCAL also stream their live newscasts via the Zumo Play app, which is available as a free download on major smart TV platforms like Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV. People are using whatever they can, whatever is working, to follow what's going on. But certainly AM is really, really an important vehicle in a situation like this. And if these towers do go down, they're going to be down for a while. There's not going to be any rush to reinstate those things. The last item we have relating to this came from Joey Peterzak in the a Facebook group called I Take Pictures of Transmitter Sites. And they do have some pictures there of this particular site on Mount Wilson. He wants to remind people that there is a link where you can hear the Los Angeles County Fire Departments. And I actually gave this a listen last night. Two-way radio communications. This is a live streaming audio link. It connects directly to the fire department's dispatch two-way radio channel. The audio quality is excellent and easy to understand. This is from the website Broadcastify. So we'll put up a link for this. You can actually search for it. Go to broadcastify.com and you'll be able to look up Los Angeles County, and you'll see the fire department listed there. Click on it and click on the live audio. So the frequency is analog FM simulcast through the county of Los Angeles. P25 digital radio is being broadcast when tones and robotic sounding voice audio is present. And the streaming equipment is rack-mounted at the LA Fire Communications Center. Obviously, they were constantly being called to address fires in different areas that had sparked, and I can just imagine the pressure that these people are under. So if you want to hear some of that live, broadcastify.com and look for the LA County Fire Department.
In our next story, we have a ham operator that must pay in first responder interference case. This is by Paul McLane of Radioworld. A ham radio operator in Idaho must pay a record $34,000 penalty for causing interference with communications during a fire suppression effort. That's the ruling from the Federal Communications Commission in the case of Jason Frawley, licensee of amateur radio station WA7CQ. Frawley acknowledged that he operated on a frequency without authorization, but argued that he did not interfere with government communications and was trying to help. He asked for a cancellation or reduction, but the commission has rejected his appeal. The FCC said that in 2021, Frawley willfully and repeatedly operated without authorization and interfered with radio communications of the U.S. Forest Service, which was attempting to direct operations of fire suppression aircraft working a 1,000-acre wildfire on national forest land near Elk River, Idaho. The FCC said that over a 2-day period, Frawley transmitted 8 times without authorization on a frequency allocated to the government use. The Forest Service complained about transmissions on 151.145 MHz. According to its case summary, the frequency is in the public safety pool that was being used by the Forest Service in the Idaho Department of Lands to coordinate the firefighting. The complaint stated that the individual had caused radio frequency interference to communications with the U.S. Forest Service firefighters' fire suppression aircraft. The complaint alleged that on July 17th and 18th, 2021, the individual had interrupted fire suppression activities and had begun advising the firefighters and aircraft personnel of hazards at a radio repeater site located at Elk Butte. The complaint also stated that the individual had identified himself on the radio as Comtech and his location as Elk River Airstrip. The FCC said that on July 18th, the Fire Operations Section Chief left the scene of the fire, drove to the airstrip, and told Frawley to cease operations on the frequency. The FCC said the base forfeiture is $10,000 per violation of each of the 2 days that Frawley operated without a license on 151.145 MHz, and $7,000 for each of the 2 days that he caused interference to authorized stations. It added that it had actually chosen not to adjust the penalty upwards as it has done in certain past cases. You know, when you're a ham radio operator, it's fine to be on the ham bands, but mind your own business when it's outside of the ham bands, and leave the law enforcement, the Forest Service, or whatever service is out there alone doing its job, because it's not a good idea to either interfere.
You think he may have been using one of those little inexpensive handheld radios that is not supposed to transmit outside of the ham bands, but does?
Yeah.
More than likely.
Probably.
Anyways, not a very smart thing to do. So he is going to have to pay the price for that. We move over to Europe, to Switzerland. A story from Swissinfo.ch via Radioworld. Swiss Broadcasting Corporation pulls the plug on FM radio. Swiss Broadcasting Corporation, SBC, switched off outdated analog FM transmitters at 11:59 p.m. on New Year's Eve. Connections to around 850 ultra shortwave transmitters throughout Switzerland have come to an end. Anyone wishing to continue listening to the radio stations SRF1, SRF2, Coulter, and SRF3 in the new year, for example, will have to switch to the digital radio technology DAB+ or internet radio. All other SBC programs were previously only available via the internet or DAB+. SBC, Swiss SWI Swissinfo.ch's parent company, now only needs around 260 antennas for DAB+ broadcasting. Around 24 private radio stations in Switzerland will continue to broadcast via FM and will not discontinue the service until the end of 2026 at the latest. According to the Federal Office of Communications, around 10% of the population listened to radio only via FM at the end of 2024. Meanwhile, the use of DAB+ and internet radio has risen continuously since 2015, from 23% to 41% in 2023 for DAB+, and from 26% to 39% for internet radio. FM radio was most frequently listened to while driving, 33% of listeners in 2023, according to the federal office. In 2021, over 60,000 petitioners wanted the government to rethink plans to begin phasing out FM radio, but the petition seemed to have little impact. So imagine you have an older car, and you've been driving around listening to your FM radio for years, and you suddenly turn it on January 1st, and there's nothing there.
You know, the first phrase says it all of whoever took decisions by calling it outdated analog FM transmitters.
Right.
What's outdated about it exactly? How can you tell me or explain to me what outdated means exactly with those FM transmitters? These decisions are taken by people that have one and only one idea, and I guess there's a big push from the tech companies behind all of this, and they just move forward.
Look at us, man. We just found out we're broadcasting on a antique radio system, completely outdated, on 90.3 FM here in Montreal, along with all the other FM stations here in Montreal and throughout North America.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Thank you so much for listening on that outdated radio of yours.
Exactly.
So what's happening with our sun? Well, our sun is quieting down. There's a lot less sunspots than there were in the last few weeks with X-flares and even some geomagnetic storming. And so things are probably going to be, still good. Conditions are still going to be good, but quiet. Unless some surprise happens, because you never know when we're at the peak of solar cycle 25. There could be new sunspots suddenly appearing or getting into view. But for now, it looks like this week is going to be quiet, which is a good thing sometimes to have a little bit of quiet conditions, but still good conditions. As we're recording, the sunspot number is 126. The solar flux is 162. And, quiet conditions ahead. That means do turn on your radio tune every day. Check out what's on the bands. There's always something interesting and always something to listen to. But for that, you need to turn on a radio and listen.
I'm Richard Cuff of Allentown, Pennsylvania. You're tuned to the International Radio Report. 30 minutes of news about radio on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
And now we have a news item about a hospital radio station shuts down after nearly 60 years. This is by Alex McIntyre, BBC News West Midlands. A hospital radio station that has been broadcasting for nearly 60 years hosted its last ever show on January 5th. Radio Lathan, based at Lathan Hospital in Crewe, Cheshire, started in 1967 and has since become a source of local news, entertainment, and music for patients and staff. But Mid-Cheshire Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust, which runs the hospital, said the station transmitted its final show on Sunday. It was billed as a memorable farewell broadcast, and people were encouraged to share their 5 decades of memories of the hospital. Nicola Price, Chief People Officer at the Trust, said she was grateful to the volunteer presenters who had given their time and talent to Radio Lathan over the years. Their dedication has brought comfort, joy, and connection to countless patients, she said. The legacy of our hospital radio will always remain a cherished part of Lathan's hospital's history. Anyone who wishes to share their memories of Radio Lathan should do so by messaging the station via its Facebook page, which is named Radio Lathan on Facebook. So, this is an interesting thing that we didn't know about, a hospital radio there, and I guess the idea behind it is cool. Why not have a hospital radio that patients could maybe find comfort in when you're, not feeling well? Kind of sad that they're shutting it down after 60 years, though.
Yeah, I think we've had stories in the past of some of these. There are some other hospitals that do have internal radio stations operating. This one, 60 years, pretty impressive to have it, but sad to see that it has shut down. We go next to some information about a new book that might be of interest to you. Radio Taiwan International launches a new book called Shortwave Era. This comes from Radioinfo Asia. Radio Taiwan International launched a new Shortwave Era, from the Cold War to democracy, from intelligence broadcasting to the voice of peace. Let the world hear Taiwan's voice. It was released last month. Shortwave Era chronicles RTI's nearly century-long journey broadcasting Taiwan's voice to the world in multilingual languages. It provides a detailed account of how RTI has used multilingual broadcasting to build international communications bridges, witnessing Taiwan's significant interactions with the global community. From World War II to the end of the Cold War, RTI was not only an international radio station, but also played a unique role on the special battleground, including executing intelligence missions through the Teresa Teng Time program and compiling communist bandit broadcasts as part of its classified intelligence operations. RTI chairperson Cheryl Lay remarked on today's RTI is like a mini United Nations with colleagues from around the world sharing Taiwan's stories, which is also the world's story, fully reflecting RTI's international character and cultural mission. At a book launch, 4 RTI hosts shared moving stories. Japanese language host Wang Shu King, with 45 years of experience, spoke of listeners as family, including one veteran listener who has been tuning in for over 60 years and still records the details of every broadcast. Mandarin host Tan Zi Yi shared her experiences of Chinese listeners visiting Taiwan and RTI hosting family reunion events for foreign migrant workers. Thai language host Tao Yung Sheng mentioned how his program provides essential information to newly arrived migrant workers in Taiwan, helping them overcome difficulties. Vietnamese host V Phan shared the story of a Vietnamese Chinese listener who had been tuning into RTI for 40 or 50 years. Although this listener, who was like family, has since passed away, the deep bond remains. The book also includes many touching stories, such as one of a Malaysian listener who was isolated due to a rare illness, and how RTI opened a window for her to the wider world. So, some interesting work that was done by RTI, not just your conventional broadcasting, but doing some World War II and Cold War related broadcasts as well. So that could be an interesting book to get your hands on. You may want to look for that, see if you can find it out there. I'm sure it's available online for you.
Yeah, it looks very, very interesting.
We have one quick programming note to pass along to you. We just received this information from Terry Colgan through Texas Radio Shortwave. Texas Radio Shortwave will stream the Swedish pirate radio station Radio Igloo on Mixcloud Sunday, January 12th at 1800 UTC. Propagation to many parts of the world was terrible for their January 5th broadcast on 9670. And they do want listeners to have a chance to hear what they missed, an hour of music and talk from Radio Igloo. So they're streaming the show at 1800 UTC on Sunday, January the 12th. So as you're listening today, you can tune over later on today. And they will run their interval signal from 1758. And the URL is mixcloud.com/live/Texas Radio SW/. So thanks to Terry for passing that along to us.
And we have upcoming ham radio events and contests.
First, from the Pro-Digi Contest Club of Romania, the Pro-Digi Contest, 1200 Zulu January 18th to 11:59 Zulu January the 19th. Bands are 80 through 10 meters, and the mode for that one is PSK 63.
We have the Hungarian Radio Amateur Society as Hungarian DX Contest, 1200 Zulu January 18th to 11:59 Zulu January 19th. Bands are 160 through 10 meters, and it's CW and SSB.
Here's a big one, organized by the National Contest Journal, the North American QSO Party, SSB. 1800 Zulu January 18th to 0559 Zulu January the 19th. 160 all the way through 10 meters, and it's a single sideband contest.
And finally, there's the ARRL January VHF Contest, 1900 Zulu January 18th to 0359 Zulu January 20th, organized by the American Radio Relay League. Bands are all amateur radio bands 6 meters and up, and all legal modes of operation are permitted: CW, SSB, MSK 144, FT8, FM, PSK 31, FSK 441, and JT 65. So check it out. It could be an interesting one to monitor also if you have a scanner radio.
And that will do it for us today. If you'd like to reach us by email, radioreport@yahoo.com is our address. We're live streaming and archived at ckut.ca. Our Facebook group, International Radio Report, we invite you to join the group along with the 968 members that we currently have. Our YouTube channel, you can go and listen to our show at your convenience, current shows and older shows as well, youtube.com/@IRR, and you can subscribe there. Finally, our X account is at IRRCKUT, and we invite you to follow us there. Thanks for tuning in this week. We'll do it again next Sunday here on the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye-bye.
This is Family Radio. We now end Family Radio programs to Canada on 5985 kilohertz in the 49 meter band. Write to Family Radio, Oakland, California, 94621 in the United States of America. This is WYFR, Okeechobee, Florida in the United States of America.